We're joined by Charles Franklin of the Marquette University Law School Poll, the busiest guy in poll business these days. So we're going to start with the results from yesterday's poll that came out. Let's give viewers a quick look at the most recent numbers, starting with the president, likely voters. So Hillary Clinton leads Donald Trump there with 46% to Donald Trump's 40%, with 4% for Gary Johnson, the Libertarian, and 3% for Jill Stein. So Charles, tell us a little bit, how does that compare to the more recent polls? It seems to be a pretty steady advantage for Hillary Clinton.
It is, and it's also close to the polling average across a number of polls, not just mine. What we see here is that in the last 3 weeks, Clinton has added 2 points to her total. Trump has added 3 to his, and the result is moving from a 7-point to a 6-point Clinton advantage, very slight change. The other interesting thing is that Gary Johnson, the Libertarians' vote, has come down from 9% to 4%. Jill Stein, the Green candidate, at 3%. This is typical as an election approaches to see the polling for third-party candidates decline and their ultimate votes to also go down as people make the decision of whether to vote for that third-party candidate or vote for the lesser of two evils, perhaps, when it comes to the two major party candidates. So we are seeing that shift happen, but it's not really shifting the presidential numbers much. That 1-point change is pretty small. The last thing that we see is that Trump still struggles to win his full share of Republican voters. He's getting about 81% of Republicans. She's getting 89% of Democrats. It's a little improvement for him, but not as much as she's getting. And Donald Trump still struggles in the Milwaukee suburban counties, the WOW counties, Waukesha, Ozaukee, and Washington.
Yeah, let's talk on the partisan split, but also show the gender gap in this poll, which is maybe less surprising a little bit. But Donald Trump is doing 5 points better among men, Hillary Clinton 16 points better among women. And how, talk about that, Charles, if you could, and the partisan, where would these typically be? The partisan numbers are different, say, than 4 years ago.
Right. We often do see a gender gap, but usually it's not this large, but it also tends to disappear when you look within party. So Republican men and women are typically less different from each other. Democratic men and women, not that different. What we see this time, though, is that 86% of Republican men are voting for Trump. Only 76% of Republican women are. And that's the really striking figure here, is that within the Republican Party, there's a pretty sharp gender gap as well. Also among independents. Among Democrats, it's pretty much equal, with both men and women strongly supporting Clinton.
All right, let's show one more set of numbers here on how people felt that the candidates, if they're qualified to be president. You had 59% saying Hillary Clinton is qualified, 35% saying Donald Trump is. When you combine that with kind of the low favorability for both candidates, how much do you think voters are weighing at this point their qualifications, or is it trustworthiness, likability? What's coming into play here for voters?
This question of qualified has been a strong Clinton, really her strongest advantage over Trump all year long. I should say none of these perceptions have changed very dramatically since June or July. It's kind of striking how little they've shifted over time. The area where Trump does better than Clinton is actually on the honesty question, where she's at like 27% saying she's honest now, versus Trump around 34%. Those have been a bit closer earlier, and so it does seem like maybe there's a little fall off in Clinton's honesty measure. But we've seen Trump doing slightly better than Clinton throughout the year on honesty. So the dilemma this poses to voters is a lot of voters have negative views of both of these candidates. How do they then balance those concerns and the concerns of qualification and honesty in choosing one of two candidates who, for many voters, are seen rather negatively for both of them? That's the dilemma this year.
One final question, because both the last two polls have come with very interesting timing in terms of developments in the race. So the previous one came out right, and you were in the field in the midst of the news on the Donald Trump tape on the sexual talk and the fallout of that, and this one was in the midst of the email issue being revived for Hillary Clinton. What did you see in terms of shifts for voters, and was one hurt more than the other by those revelations?
There are two sides to this. One is short term, the Trump tape seemed to move the vote a lot more than it did with the FBI news this week. But the effects are often very fleeting. At most, we've seen a tightening of the race by 1 point since that Trump video came out. So it doesn't look like even the fairly substantial shifts over that weekend stayed with us. And there's a reason for that people have more fundamental reasons to support one candidate or the other. When these sensational news items develop, they may move voters for a day or two or three, but then they reassert the fundamentals of why they were voting for one candidate or the other. And unless it's really devastating, that news goes away pretty fast. What we saw with this latest FBI news was we were asking a question, how bothered are you by Clinton's use of a private email server? In the people interviewed before the FBI news, 50% said they were very bothered by that. But in the interviews completed after that news came out, it was 48%. No change, certainly not a spike. On the other hand, we did see a bit of a vote shift. In the pre-news vote, Clinton was leading by 11, and after the news came out, she was leading by 6. And so that's maybe a 5-point move. That's less than the 13 to 20-point moves we saw in the wake of the Trump video. But as I just said, that Trump video doesn't seem to have had a lasting effect. Seems unlikely that this news would have a lasting effect either.